Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Sure, I suppose. Both our goals here are to shut the raid door down. Shiro nodded her head. So let's see. I'm investigating the raid door since I was curious as to the type of raid it was. I was tampering with it to see if I can find out more, but I was repelled. I wasn't sabotaging it since I want it to be closed as well. As for my goal, well, let's keep it a secret for now. Shiro smiled while placing her finger in front of her lips. Then did you find out anything of interest? He asked. Why would I tell you that? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Since we both want the raid to be closed, shouldn't we be sharing important information? Of course, but I'm a greedy person. What will you give me in return? Shiro smiled. Kira's expression didn't look too good, and Shiro knew that he was getting annoyed. Humph, serves you right for daring to pressure this princess before. She scoffed in her mind. What do you want? He asked after a short moment. Access to the Osbar family's mana springs. Shiro replied while narrowing her eyes. Judging from the fact that all 4 of his followers were C-class, she can estimate that his influence shouldn't be small. If she could win an entry to the mana springs in an auction, surely that means he can get one too. That's no problem. I can even give you several days' worth of entries as long as the information is worth it, Kira replied. Shiro was a little surprised at how fast he agreed, and from the way he spoke about the entry, it was like it belonged to him. Seems like you have quite the connection to the Osbar family. She raised an eyebrow. Well, of course. I'm the second young master. Kira Osbar. Kira rolled his eyes. Aya, you should have said that earlier, second young master. I would have asked for full authority over the springs had I known sooner. Shiro laughed. Kira only ignored her since he knew that she was messing with him. TCH, no fun. Shiro stopped laughing when she saw no reaction. Can we get to the important part, please? Fine. So what I found out is that one of the monsters inside of the raid is controlling everything. This naturally includes the raid door for some reason. I'm not sure just yet. But from my analysis, he or she aimed to escape the dungeon and subsequently the city. Controlling the raid door? Kira frowned in seriousness. If such a situation were true, then this would be bad for everyone. Yeah. In addition to this, I do believe that the monster is either specialized in defense or speed. After all, their main goal is probably to escape rather than to fight. Therefore, unless we have people who are specialized in attack or speed, we'll have a hard time beating the monster. Of course, we can also try using crowd control, but he'll probably escape the spell's range before it hits. Shiro shrugged slightly. That's quite interesting. Kira leaned back slightly and frowned. I'm thinking of making a strong raid group that will enter the raid to scout out for more information before heading back to the outside. In this raid group, we'll be distributing a new item that we've managed to secure a while back. Oh, a new item? Shiro asked as her interest was piqued. Yeah, the item is dubbed as the Return Stone. If you crush it inside the raid, it'll force you out no matter the kind of situation you're in. Kira nodded. And why are you telling me this? Because I wish to invite you to the team. For someone of your caliber, you'll be a big help to any group you join. Not to mention, we both want to close the raid. There are no negatives for you. Perhaps, but is it right to trust us like this, second young master? Shiro narrowed her eyes dangerously. The 4 followers gritted their teeth and prepared to put their life on the line should the situation arise. Raising up his hand, Kira stopped them from making a move. I understand your concern, but I'm willing to provide you with anything you need should you be able to help clear this raid with the team that I've put together. He offered. What's in this for you? I get to protect this city and keep it safe. Is that all? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Of course not, but the real reason is a little bit embarrassing. He smiled lightly. I'm getting curious now. Shiro chuckled. Just like how you have your secrets, I'll be keeping some of mine. Kira replied back with a soft chuckle. Fair enough, but I won't join a half-assed raid party. Shiro shook her head slightly. Even if they have the Return Stone, if the party was useless, she'll just be wasting her time. Don't worry. All of the families have agreed on making the strongest party we can form. Kira replied as he understood her concerns. The other families are okay with this? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Yeah. All we're lacking now is some more intel to increase the success of the raid. With all the strongest members and life-saving items, we'll be able to get further into the raid and get a better understanding. With the supplies that we have, We're able to attempt the raid for a total of 2 times before we're forced to go at it with our lives on the line. So 2 trial attempts to get info, and a 3rd serious attempt to clear the raid. Shiro muttered while leaning back on her bench. Do you have enough resources for these 2 to join the raid? Shiro asked while gesturing at Ian and Lysandra. Of course, but we'll need to make sure that each of the members are the best so that we can assure a higher chance of success. While I don't doubt your strength, despite the fact that you 2 are level 51 and the Mist there is level 53, there are others who will be skeptical due to the gap between early 50s and level 60s. Kier warned. That's understandable. It's nothing too serious since we can just prove ourselves with a little spar, can't we? Shiro chuckled. Well, that's one way to go about it. Kier nodded his head. All right, I'll join your raid party, and in return, I'm allowed daily use of the mana springs every day for the time being. This lasts till the raid is complete. Shiro summarized with a smile. Indeed. But remember, this is only if you get a place in the raid party. I'll take you to meet the rest of them, and we can go sort things out. They're currently living in the Osbar mansion so that we can improve our teamwork. Kier nodded as he stood up. Shiro did the same and followed behind him. As they approached the Osbar family mansion, Shiro saw a familiar face. Gilbert, Shiro thought with a smile. During the time that she hadn't seen him, his level had increased from level 65 to 68. This kind of leveling speed was around average, even though it could be much faster due to his class. Must be because he needs to work as the butler for the Ospars. Shiro mused to herself. Welcome home, young master. Gilbert bowed slightly when he saw Kier. Sweeping his gaze over Shiro, he didn't know why, but he felt a sense of familiarity. How strange. He thought to himself, but moved his gaze away since it would be rude to stare for longer. I'm back. How are the guests so far? Kier smiled. They have been adapting amazingly, as expected of the geniuses of each family. Gilbert replied. That's good. Help me gather everyone in Hall 7. I wish to introduce a few new members to them. As you wish, young master. After saying that, Gilbert left the area. Come, I'll guide you to Hall 7 so that you can be acquainted with everyone. As they walked towards Hall 7, Shiro took this time to look around the mansion since the last time she entered it was through force. She didn't have the time to just leisurely look around. Now that he's guiding the way, I can actually see the formations without them activating. Shiro thought to herself. After examining the formations in detail, she understood how they worked. Unless one is marked, the formation will activate once a foreign entity is in range. How merciless. She chuckled slightly. Did something humor you? Kier asked. Nothing important, don't worry. Shiro smiled. However, she was currently memorizing Kier's aura so that she can replicate it should the situation arise. After all, she might need to infiltrate the mansion again in the future. Arriving at Hall 7, Shiro saw the party standing around while a few of them were glaring at each other. Shiro recognized them to be Alara Kasadan and Lok Cermak. Surprisingly, Alara had managed to level up to level 56, while Lok's wasn't far off at level 54. The elders probably power leveled them in dungeons. But for the two of them to be on the same party despite the fact that they were trying to kill each other before, how peculiar. Shiro smiled behind her mask as this seemed quite interesting. Sweeping her gaze through the group, she noticed that most of the top families had sent their younger generation here. Including the Ospar family, we have the Kasadan, Cermak, Dermark, Argent, Holland, Mavic, and the Yitri family. All of them are within the top 10. Shiro thought to herself as she noticed that the party seemed to be quite balanced. Kasadan, Cermak, Argent, and Mavic are damage dealers. Holland and Yitri act as tankers and supports. Seems like we've made everyone wait. Kier smiled. No worries, young Master Kier, but I can't help but wonder who are the 3 behind you. One of the women asked with a slightly seductive smile. Her name was Trisha Holland, a member of the Holland family that was ranked 8 in terms of power in Kairosa. While her face was only above average in terms of beauty, her figure was definitely one that made men drool, especially since the clothes she wore was quite revealing. However, Kier wasn't interested at all. These 3 are the people that I wish to bring into the party. I know that they're quite low-leveled, but I can assure you that their power is above what their levels show. He replied. Is that so? Well, some of us are a little under-leveled anyways, so it's fine. As long as the power matches a certain threshold, Am I right, young Master Locks? Alara smirked. TCH, you don't think I can destroy you despite being 2 levels under you, ah? Locks glared back. Both of you stop it. Kier frowned as his aura lashed out. However, Shiro could tell that almost all of his aura was focused towards Locks. How could it be that he's interested in Alara? Shiro raised an eyebrow as she started to grin behind her mask. Flinching slightly, Locks clicked his tongue before shutting up. He knew that he was no match against Kier, no matter how confident he was. Anyways, I know that some of you are concerned about their low levels, so we'll have a short spar. 1 point, no restraints. Once an attack hits directly, the match is over. Does that sound fair to everyone? Kier suggested. All of them nodded in agreement, since they couldn't say no after all. So who would like to start first? Kier asked with a smile. Mom, can I go first? Lysandra whispered as she wanted to test herself a little against the young geniuses. Much like Shiro, she was also a battle junkie that liked to test herself against strong opponents constantly. Of course you may. Shiro nodded with a smile. Lysandra's eyes glowed in excitement as she walked to the center of the hall, where the marked-out arena was. Summoning her swords, Lysandra kept her mask and robe on. Lisa, level 51 Archlight Swordswoman. Lysandra introduced herself as she scanned her potential opponents. A small discussion occurred amongst the party as another woman walked into the arena. Jessica, level 54 Molten Warrior. The girl named Jessica introduced herself. She was the lowest level melee type class, so they decided to put her against the newcomer. Start, Kier shouted out when he saw that both of them were ready. Asterisk bang. Lysandra dashed at Jessica as her cloak fluttered wildly from the speed. Jessica only narrowed her eyes for a moment before stomping down with her foot. Asterisk bang bang bang. Fractures spread out from the ground as a single stomp was able to force the ground to be uneven. Taking a deep breath, Jessica plunged her hand into the ground. Sizzling sounds could be heard as Lysandra instantly felt her instincts warn her of danger. Pivoting on her foot, she used the uneven ground to maneuver her way around Jessica. Pulling out her hand from the ground, Jessica now wielded a molten greatsword along with a pair of molten arm guards. Swinging her sword, she sent out a ring of fire energy which instantly increased the room temperature substantially. Tracing her finger down the blade of her sword, Lysandra responded to the attack by sending out her own wave of energy. Asterisk bang. Ping. Both attacks canceled each other out. Lysandra, knowing that this is a prime opportunity to close the gap between them, readied her sword and charged towards Jessica while activating her true elemental armor. Light erupted from her as the pressure that she exuded increased by a large margin. Naturally, they couldn't see her armor since it was hidden under her cloak. Widening her eyes with shock, Jessica gritted her teeth and activated several strength-enhancing skills. Twisting her body, she swung her sword towards Lysandra. Smiling lightly behind her mask, Lysandra raised up her sword and parried Jessica's attack. Shifting her body slightly so that she could divert the attack, she used the moment to her advantage and roundhouse kicked Jessica in the side of her body. Gah! Asterisk bang. Crashing across the ground, Jessica clutched her ribs in pain. Match won by Lisa. Rachel, can you heal Jessica please? Kier asked while turning his head towards her location. Rachel nodded her head and walked over to Jessica while Lisa made her way back to Shiro. How was it? Shiro asked with a smile. It was okay. She was less experienced than I thought. Will they be okay in the raid? Lysandra frowned slightly. It's okay. They make up for it with powerful skills instead. But compared to humans, fighting against monsters is more simple, I suppose. Shiro smiled. I guess. But you said that the monster this time is intelligent. Since he could be in the same situation as Mom, I don't feel too confident with this party if they're all like you. MN, I get your concern since honestly, I'm the same. No matter how powerful a skill, it wouldn't matter if it didn't hit. Plus, if the intelligent monster reincarnated as well like me, he or she might have a lifetime's worth of experience behind them to help them survive. At that moment, the raid party is finished. Shiro shook her head slightly. Lysandra nodded her head since this was her greatest concern. If another monstrous being like Shiro appeared, their chances of survival will be quite low. Anyways, I'll be fine. At worst, we'll just use the return stone and get out of the raid. Shiro smiled, and patted her shoulder. I believe it's your turn next, she said, turning to Een. Yup, I'll make it quick. Een nodded her head and walked toward the arena. So who's fighting me? She asked. Hearing her childish voice along with her physique, the party members couldn't help but wonder if it was a child under that cloak. However, despite this, they know that they shouldn't underestimate her because of her appearance. The image of a certain girl slaughtering her way through the slums was still fresh after all, especially for Alara. I am. Locke stood up and walked to the arena. Oh, it's Shorty. Inside slightly. Asterisk Poochie. Locke instantly had the urge to kill the shrimp in front of him. While his height couldn't be compared to those who were above 6 feet, especially since that was now the lower average, he couldn't be called short either. It was just that he seemed to be short because everyone around him was very tall. And yet, this childlike girl had just called him shorty despite her own height. Before he could say anything, he felt another killing intent lock onto him. Turning to the source, he paled slightly when he made eye contact with Shiro. Quickly retracting his own killing intent, he kept his guard up just in case the mystery woman wanted revenge after he defeated the midget in front of him. Are both contestants ready? Kira raised an eyebrow but decided to ignore this short contact between Shiro and Locke. Yup, let's get this over and done with. Inya, level 53 Dark Star Mage. Een said while stretching her body slightly. Locke, level 54 Draconic Lightning Mage. Start. Asterisk, boom. Several Tier 3 magic circles appeared around Locke as they activated one after another. Even Shiro couldn't help but applaud at his activation speed. Usually, unless one had a deep understanding of their spell, the activation speed would usually take up to 3 seconds, maybe 5. However, Locke was able to activate his spells within the 1-second range. While he couldn't be called a genius, he was deserving of being called talented when compared to some of the geniuses that Shiro had seen in her previous life. 1 second, huh? Not bad. Een smiled behind her mask. Looking at the lightning dragons shooting towards her, Een yawned slightly before snapping her fingers. Asterisk, boom. Suddenly, a giant phoenix head made from dark star element erupted from the ground and consumed the dragons before doing a burping motion. Watching the phoenix fade away, Locke couldn't help but widen his eyes in disbelief. Impossible. Locke cried out after snapping himself out of his shock. As a level 54 Draconic Lightning Mage, his magic shouldn't be extinguished this easily. And yet, to his disbelief, the girl in front of him had extinguished the spell with ease. Not only that, her spell had even made fun of him by burping. Gritting his teeth, Locke could feel his anger increase with each passing second. Shorty, your magic is pretty good. It was a good snack for my phoenix. Een giggled as she couldn't help but feel a sadistic joy emerge from her heart. I've taught her well. Shiro smiled faintly and nodded her head like a proud parent. Lysandra only ignored this and kept her eyes on Locke. Despite the fact that Een was seemingly relaxed and even joked around, she could tell that she was on her guard. All that she was trying to do right now was force Locke to do his best against her. That way, she'll be able to see how potent her magic is against a fully angered C-class adventurer. You dare mock me? Locke seethed with anger and lightning raged around him. Asterisk TCHI. Striking against the ground, countless cracks and burn marks were formed in a circle around Locke. Raising his hand in front of him, he grabbed the air and summoned a lightning spear. Lightning flickered around the spear and slowly wrapped around his body as if it was alive. Soon, a layer of armor could be seen covering Locke. Naturally, Een activated her true elemental armor to counter this. Asterisk bang. Stomping against the ground, Locke launched his body towards Een. Did I strike a nerve? Een asked as joy could be heard from her voice. Swiping her hand upwards, several fire tendrils attempted to wrap around Locke. Humph. Scoffing in disdain, a pulse of lightning erupted from him and erased the fire tendrils. Twisting his body, he stabbed his spear towards Een. While he tried to mask his killing intent, Shiro could easily feel his hatred towards Een, and she was ready to make a move at any moment. Humph, you dare try to kill my daughter in front of me, some nerve. Shiro thought coldly. However, Een had it covered. Jumping back slightly, 2 Tier 3 magic circles stacked on top of one another and gave the illusion that it was a Tier 6 spell. Double cast. Dark Star Ember. Een commanded, as it was a type of spell that would be empowered once she called out the spell name. Asterisk, boom. Radiating a fearful amount of mana, the magic circle started to greedily absorb the ambient mana. But that wasn't the limit. It had even reached out to Lox and started to absorb some of his mana that was used in his skill. What? He cried out inside his mind, as this kind of phenomenon would only happen if the spell was more powerful than what he casted. Quickly sweeping his spear towards the magic circle, he wanted to disrupt the spell so that it wouldn't activate properly. It won't work, Een chuckled. Dark Star Ember was a skill that would create an extra volatile spark of Dark Star element. Regardless of what it touches, it would spontaneously combust and make itself bigger. The worst part was that it would feed off of the enemy's mana as well. However, she had to be careful with this skill, since the moment it grows too big for her to control, it would attempt to consume the caster. But after her training with Shiro, she had enough control over her magic to be confident in controlling the size of the spell. Even if Lox managed to resist the spell enough to the point where it would threaten her control over it, she could just cancel the spell. In the first place, this was a 1-point spar, so she didn't need to damage him several times. Just once was enough. Flickering into life, a spark of Dark Star element latched itself to the top of the spear and exploded into a giant ball of fire. What the hell is this? Lox cried out as he watched his lightning get consumed by the Dark Star element. Quickly throwing the spear away, Lox attempted to retreat, since he knew that there was a big chance of losing this spar should he continue to attack. However, Een had anticipated this already. Taking a page from Shiro's book, she snapped her fingers as the second spark of Dark Star Ember appeared behind Lox. She had hidden the spark within the rift the moment the spell had activated. That was due to the fact that he had a disposable spear on hand. If both sparks hit the spear, it would just be wasted effort. Arg! Crying out in pain, Lox quickly removed his jacket and threw it to one side. Unfortunately, the fire jumped onto his shirt and continued to burn. Stop! Inya wins. Kier called out. Flexing his fingers slightly, a magic circle appeared around the Dark Star element and tried to extinguish it. To his surprise, he noticed that his flames seemed to be weaker than what Een had used, despite her being 7 levels behind him. How is this possible? As a Solari Archknight, my flame should be able to suppress her with ease. He thought with a frown. The only explanation for this would be that her flame was higher than his in terms of grade. Leaving Kier to his own thoughts, Een waved her hand and extinguished the flames before hopping back to Shiro. How was it? Een asked. Not bad. Shiro nodded. Is that it? Een pouted, seeing her lackluster response. Emin? Good spell. Shiro tilted her head. Sigh, I'm gonna go play with Lil Sis. Een sighed. Leaving a dumbfounded Shiro behind, Een started to talk to Lysandra. Could it be that she wanted me to compliment her? Shiro raised an eyebrow. I'll reward her later then. She muttered to herself before walking on the arena. I'm the last one. So who wants to play? Shiro chuckled. I will. A voice called out. Her opponent was delicate man who looked quite feminine. Long black hair and a pair of clear silver eyes. He was definitely a sight to behold. Isaac Argent, level 58 fractured swordsman. I do apologize about my level, but I believe that you wouldn't mind. After all, it seems like you can take care of anyone within 10 levels of you, he said while narrowing his eyes slightly. Ho, and what makes you think that? Shiro smiled behind her mask. If she remembered correctly, it was also one of the Argent family members that triggered the emergency raid which started this. That is because rather than human, you feel like a mass of killing intent and danger, he replied. His response shocked the other party members, since his analysis of them had always been rather tame. It was never something as extreme as what he had called Shiro. If you say it that way, you'll hurt my feelings. Shiro grinned. Spare me the jokes, Miss Nitri. I can clearly tell that you are suppressing a large portion of your power. Despite your physique, you are more monstrous than the monsters I have encountered. They have never given me the sense of death by just standing in their presence, unlike you. He narrowed his eyes. Calling me a monster, how hurtful. But I'll entertain you. Shiro laughed lightly. She had initially planned to end this in an instant using her spells, but seeing Isaac's amusing analysis of her, she decided to duke it out with swords instead. Tapping her necklace, she summoned Ataraxia and stood with a relatively relaxed posture. Isaac brought out his own sword. It was a sheathed katana that was held around his waist. Begin. Starting the match, Kier stepped back and watched with interest. His interaction with Shiro allowed him to see her power with spells. Now that she was challenged by Isaac, he was curious about her power with the sword. First stance, rippling moonlight. Isaac muttered in a low voice as his body flickered from his spot. He's coming, Shiro thought as she activated her sword domain. A gust of wind blew around Shiro, forming a small dome. Sword domain. Isaac's gaze flickered in admiration. In the time that he had spent inside this city, he had never seen anyone with an attack domain, never mind a sword domain, which was a step higher than attack domain. And yet, the mysterious girl in front of him had showed him just that. A few of the members in the hall shared the same thought as Isaac. If one was able to unlock the attack domain, they would be hailed as one of the top 5 geniuses of Kairosa. Hell, maybe even the top genius of Kairosa. But she had gone a step further and showcased the sword domain. Focusing her mind on her surroundings, she gripped the handle of her sword tightly. If not for the fact that she wanted to clash against him with the sword, she would have never allowed him to approach her unless she willed it. Asterisk clang. Flicking her sword into a reverse grip, she raised it behind her and blocked his strike. I never expected that Miss Nitri to have unlocked the sword domain. Isaac smiled while backing off slightly. Hee, since you've seen mine, why don't you show me yours as well? Shiro smiled. What does she mean show me yours? The members that recognized her skill frowned in confusion. It was as if she was suggesting that Isaac had a domain of his own. I don't get what you mean. Isaac smiled. Ho, don't lie to me. I can see the truth. When I blocked your sword, my intent of countering was pretty strong, you know. If not for the fact that you concentrated your domain in front of you, I would have countered without worry. Shiro replied while narrowing her eyes. During the moment of contact, she had focused her killing intent to lash out at him in a short burst. This was the cause as to why he had activated his own domain in order to ensure his safety. Hearing this, several pairs of eyes stared at Isaac in confusion and disbelief. So you were able to find out within that short exchange? Isaac smiled. Of course, but I'm surprised. Why have you hidden it till now? Not only that, why did you show it in this match? Shiro asked while readying herself for the next exchange. Tall bamboos are destroyed easily. In a situation where the city has no attack domain user, don't you think my domain will stand out a little? But the situation has changed. After this raid, I'll be leaving this city, so it's fine. Isaac chuckled. As for why I showed it in this match, let's say you're more dangerous than I gave you credit for. From now on, no holding back anymore. Prepare yourself, Isaac said as he stopped smiling. A silver aura flickered off his body while his sword started to give off a soft shattering sound. Several copies of the same sword seemed to overlap each other as Shiro looked at it with interest. This seems quite similar to my refraction skill. Now that I think of it, I haven't introduced myself, have I? Nitri, level 51 Elemental Sword Sage. As she finished her introduction, light, dark star, and shadow elemental orbs formed around her body, gathering towards her sword. Dyeing the crystal with a mixture of white, black, and purple, it also started to hum as several copies of the sword flickered in and out of view. Style Azura's Path, Sword Path. Crescent Moonblade, Howling Moon. As the two activated their respective sword styles, they dashed towards each other as their swords created a faint trail of light behind them. Asterisk clang 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 clang. Both their skills canceled each other out as the real swords clashed against one another. The trail left behind by the sword tangled with each other as if it was two serpents fighting in a life and death battle. Despite the fact that Shiro had activated her domain, she could feel that Isaac was definitely more experienced in the way of the sword. Not only was his domain more stable than hers, his way of controlling his sword was also more superior to her. It didn't come as a surprise to Shiro since she was primarily a ranged fighter. However, it didn't mean that she was going to give up. No, the harder the fight, the more it got her blood to boil. Her eyes widened in joy as she grinned with excitement. Summoning a second sword, she started to increase the amount of pressure on Isaac. Since she could control her body almost perfectly, her spare hand was just as strong as her main hand. It was like fighting against two equally experienced fighters. Understanding that he was slowly losing the upper hand, Isaac took a deep breath and increased the pace of which he consumed his mana. The silver aura around him flared crazily as his speed increased little by little. Asterisk bang. Stomping down with his foot, his sword shot forwards like a bullet. Many of the spectators thought that the match was over but paused in shock when they saw Shiro's insane reaction speed and flexibility for her to be able to dodge the strike. Her balance was on the very edge of tipping, but it was still enough for her to keep her posture. Flicking her wrist, she slashed towards his body while his guard was down. At that moment, Isaac's body flickered and returned to the stance he had a moment before stabbing out with his sword. Asterisk clang. Shiro was slightly surprised since she knew that this was beyond his reaction speed. Shifting her moment so that she could retreat faster, she slid along the ground and narrowed her eyes. Interesting, she thought with a smile. Tapping her necklace, she summoned 4 more swords to hover around her. Sword path, 6-armed demonic Azura. Amazing. Isaac couldn't help but praise when he saw her skill with controlling the 4 floating swords along with the 2 in her hands. It was as if he was against 6 experts of the same caliber. However, he wasn't about to be outdone. Once again, the silver aura around his body flickered as he proceeded to stab out towards one of the swords. Asterisk clang. Deflecting it away, his guard was left open to other attacks. But before Shiro could land a hit, his body seemed to be reset as he stabbed towards the closest sword. This happened for another 4 times as all of her swords were deflected. Analysis complete. Shiro muttered as her excitement continued to increase. The secret to why he was able to deflect her attacks despite the fact that it should be impossible for his level was because he saved a certain stance before loading that same stance after each attack. By calculating the most optimal location for the stance, he'll be able to essentially attack 6 times at once. However, this seemed to have a harsh impact on Isaac's body since she could tell that his stamina and mana was being drained at a ridiculous pace. Analyzing potential save points, calculating path, simulating solution. Counter complete. Readying her swords once more, her face became void of emotions as she fully concentrated her mind. She's serious now, Isaac thought as he knew that this was potentially the turning point. Should he succumb to her assault, he'll definitely lose the point. Exploding a small pocket of mana behind her, her body flickered in front of him at a speed not expected by anyone, even if they overestimate her a little. Quickly saving his stance, he stabbed towards her. But before the attack could come close to hitting, she detonated another pocket of mana and shot her body into the rift. Appearing behind him with her back facing his back, she twisted her body and slashed at the opening. Asterisk clang. Loading his save, he was barely able to react to her attack when she relocated herself once more. He could tell that she was essentially detonating miniature bombs behind her in order to reposition herself. Such a risky idea was insane to try and practice, never mind a battle. If even one of her calculations were wrong, the explosion would either do nothing or damage her body enough to expose her to several life-threatening attacks. Not only did she need to make sure the explosion was within the tolerance range of her body, but she also needed to make sure that her body was in a way where she could predict where she'll be next so that she could pull off the following attack. What kind of control has she achieved with her mana and body? Isaac questioned himself while he was barely able to keep up with her despite his advantages of a stronger domain and his ability to save a stance. Increasing propulsion strength, strengthening body with mana coat. I've won, Shiro thought in her mind. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Before anyone realized, slash marks appeared on Isaac's body as his mind blacked out for a moment due to the pain. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, his stance was broken entirely as it opened him up for a lethal attack. Flickering in front of him, her sword was already on its course to decapitate him while her face was emotionless. Killing intent burst out of her and swept through the entire hall. Even Kier realized that his body became sluggish due to the fear that he felt from her killing intent. Before he could shout stop, he realized that the killing intent seemed to have disappeared like a ghost. Her swords couldn't be seen anymore as she was chopping Isaac's neck with her hand. I take it as my victory? Shiro smiled. The previous her seemed to be an illusion since the difference was like night and day. Isaac sat on the ground in a trance as he had felt his life flash before his eyes for a moment before it was consumed by overwhelming fear. Looking down at his hands, he realized that they couldn't stop trembling. Amazing, he panted. What? Shiro raised an eyebrow as a bad feeling started to rise up in her heart. This fear of death, this exhilaration, this euphoria. He panted while looking at Shiro with a burning passion. Miss Nitri, make me yours. No thanks. Shiro denied instantly while backing away. Great. Mum's broken him and made him into a pervert. Een rolled her eyes in the background while Lysandra couldn't help but nod her head in agreement. It was scary what one match against Shiro could do to a man. He should be grateful that he kept his chrysanthemum. Wait, would he enjoy it if Shiro pierced him? Looking at Isaac with mixed emotions, the current raid party couldn't believe that such a refined gentleman they knew suddenly became this. Miss Nitri, don't reject so fast. I can do whatever you want me to, he said while his face was completely flushed. Flinching back in disgust, Shiro didn't know how to respond. While she did indeed enjoy being a sadist from time to time, she was slightly uncomfortable with masochists. Stay away from me, Shiro said, backing up as quick as she could. However, Isaac wasn't offended at all. Instead, it urged him on more. That's it. Please glare at me like that. It would be better if you want to kill me, he cried out. URG. This was one of the main reasons as to why Shiro dislikes masochists. Even if she tortured them or killed them, it would only give them great joy. This wasn't the kind of reaction she liked. Oi, one of you knock out this pervert already. Shiro turned towards the raid party. They all raised their hands up, signaling their intent to stay away from Isaac. Twisting her body, Shiro attempted to roundhouse kick him behind the head to knock him out. However, before the kick could connect, Isaac turned his body and faced the kick head-on. Seeing his face filled with ecstasy, Shiro suppressed her urge to throw up and retracted her kick. She wasn't about to give this pervert more pleasure. Mr. Isaac, this is hardly the time for you to be acting like this. We still have a raid to discuss. Kira coughed. Confusion and disbelief was written all over his face as he couldn't believe that the first person to have unlocked any kind of domain was in fact a giant pervert. In just one match, his mental image of Isaac had completely shattered. From graceful genius to hardcore masochist. Despite his mental fortitude, he needed a few moments to recover from this shock. I'm sure the raid will be fine. I'm more concerned about Miss Nitri. Isaac replied without looking back. TCH, Inya, Lisa, help me out here, Shiro called out. But when she didn't get a response, she turned around and saw both of them looking away as if they didn't hear her. Unfilial daughters. Watch me take care of you later, she cried out in her mind. Jumping into the rift, Shiro stayed there and didn't come out. Miss Nitri, don't leave. Isaac pulled a face of pain after seeing her disappear. But soon, he realized that there were two others he could count on. Turning his head towards both Een and Lysandra, he wanted to talk to them so that he could know Shiro better. When the duo felt his gaze lock onto them, they both paled instantly. OSH*T. Een cried out and opened the rift before jumping in. Wait, don't leave me. Lisa widened her eyes when she saw that Een left her behind. Sorry, sis. Een apologized as the rift closed up, stopping Lysandra from leaving the place. $%, $. Cursing Een in her mind, Lysandra took a deep breath and prepared to deal with Isaac. Since both her mum and sister couldn't deal with this pervert, it was down to her to finish the job. Mustering up some courage, she turned towards Isaac. But when she saw his perverted face intensify after feeling her intent to harm him, all of her courage faded like smoke. F***ck this I'm not strong enough. Dashing towards the raid party, she was going to use them as meat shields. Holy sh*T. Don't come over here. He's your problem. One of the guys shouted out in a panic. What do you mean my problem? He's our problem now mother***cur. Lysandra shouted back. Meanwhile, in the rift, *sigh, sighing out in relief, Een could only pray for Lysandra's safety. Suddenly, she felt a hand grab her shoulder as she turned around slowly only to see Shiro's annoyed face. Oi, unfilial daughter, you seem to have fun leaving me on my own just now. Shiro interrogated while glaring at Een. Gulp. Don't hurt me too much. This baby can only take so much parental love. Een pleaded. Oh, I'll show you parental love. Shiro chuckled darkly as mana surged around her hand. GYH. A mournful scream soon filled the rift as Shiro used the traditional method of parenting, spanking the hell out of them. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. After calming down Isaac, everyone sat around a table in the conference room. Een decided to stand since she couldn't sit down properly. Tears streamed down her face, but no one could see it due to her mask. As for Lysandra, she only scoffed in annoyance as she felt no pity for Een. Humph, karma, she thought in her mind. As for Shiro, she kept getting goosebumps from the way that Isaac was staring at her. Anyways, so from what all of you have seen, Miss Nitri and her two friends are clearly qualified for this raid despite their levels being low, Kier said as he started the conference. Therefore, to combat the fact that they're lower level, we'll be making sure that most of the dungeon kills go to them during our scouting sessions so that we can raise the average level of the party. Plus, when they're higher level, I'm sure they'll be able to help out more during the boss fights. Anyone disagree with this? While I don't disagree with this, don't we want to increase the levels of the highest levels among us to 60? That way we can be as strong as we're allowed inside the dungeon. One of the members suggested. A good idea, but we can do that during our final run of the raid. That's because the door only restricts those who are above level 60 before they enter the raid. Once you get into the raid and raise your level then, you'll only have that one chance to clear it, otherwise will not be able to enter the raid again. That's why I want to let Miss Nitri get most of the kills, because don't forget, we'll also get a share of the EXP when we fight the bosses. We don't want to over-level before the proper attempt. Kira replied. If that's the case, what about you? Aren't you level 60? Indeed. Hence why I'll be watching the first attempt. Depending on how well it goes, I might participate in the second run to give extra support. You can think of me as the side act rather than the main act. Kira smiled. If that's the case, then aren't the Aspar family the only one that wouldn't be participating until we scouted out the dangers? One of the members narrowed his eyes in suspicion. I understand your concerns, hence why we'll be providing you with some of our best equipment to reduce the amount of risks to you. On top of this, you'll also have the return stone, so you wouldn't need to worry about your safety. Kira replied calmly. MN. Any other concerns? Kira asked. Just one. What about the party size? If the three of them join, we'll have to take a few people out. Excluding the young masters and mistresses of each family, we each have servants just in case our safety is compromised even with the items. While the first raid will be fine as you won't be partaking in it, what about the second or the third raid? Don't worry. Since I entered the raid with 4 bodyguards, I'll take 3 out so that we can accommodate Miss Nitri and her friends. Kier smiled. He knew that they were stronger than his guards, so it didn't matter if he took them out of the raid. Anything else? He asked just in case any problems arise in the raid. Peeking over at Lox, he knew that this man had a grudge against Alara and Een. It seems like he hates Miss Nitri's follower quite a bit after the spar. He's not even paying attention to Alara. Kier thought to himself. He had seen Alara gloat at Lox quite a bit, but he had actually endured it and focused his mind on Een. Normally, a person like him would be quite detrimental to the party. But in order to make sure the balance and satisfaction of each family was in place, he had to be in the party or else the other families would pull out of the raid. Once that happens, the chances of success would be lower despite the fact that a malignant tumor like Lox had left the party. Sometimes, sacrifices were needed to secure a better outcome. He didn't mind lowering the party friendliness a little by having Lox in the party if that meant more help from the other families. Since there are no more objections, we'll talk about the details regarding the raid and the information we've gathered so far. All of the raid parties have only managed to reach the 4th boss despite all the attempts. They were either killed or forced to retreat with heavy casualties. Kier said seriously as a few holographic images appeared in front of him. The reason for their failure was due to the fact that they couldn't meet the clear requirement for the party wipe skill. Normally, there is only 1 requirement, but this boss has 3, with the limit on party size. Each of the members needed to be good at what they were doing in order to clear this wipe skill. First requirement, damage. While the boss attempts to use the skill, a layer of armor will wrap around his body, and we need damage it as much as we can. Second requirement, mob clear. During the phase where we need to damage him as much as we can, minions would spawn around him, and we need to kill all of them. Remember, all of them. Some might hide around the room, but there will always be 50 of them that spawn. With each minion you kill, you'll get a buff which stacks with each kill you get. This buff is needed for the third requirement. The third requirement, and possibly the hardest requirement, is to shoot targets the moment they appear. The buff is needed since every time you destroy a target, a stack will be consumed. Once all the stacks are consumed, you can no longer damage the targets. On top of this, once you miss a target or hit the wrong one, the time needed for the skill to activate will be shortened. You'll need to destroy as many targets as you can since the minimum threshold is randomized. There are several rounds to this, and if you've managed to clear the minimum threshold before the final round is finished, a more powerful version of the buff will be distributed to the entire party. It's only when all three requirements are fulfilled will you enter the damage phase. Depending on how much armor we manage to chip off, the damage we deal to him will increase. The second will allow us to attack him without distractions, while the last is a buff to increase our damage. Unfortunately, none of the parties have been able to do all three tasks to a decent standard. Kier shook his head. The chance of a first kill. Shiro thought with a smile. Since this is a new raid, a mutated one at that too, the first kill rewards are bound to be good. Thinking about the possibilities, Shiro's mood started to brighten up despite the fact that the pervert was still staring at her with such burning passion. Since we know the problem regarding the fourth boss, why don't you explain the first three bosses while we're at it? Shiro asked. All right, you don't know about the first three bosses yet, do you? Kier nodded as he proceeded to explain their mechanics. The first boss was just a simple damage check. Much like the first requirement, the party needed to destroy all of his armor so that they can kill him during the damage phase. The second boss summoned minions and would be invincible while they're still around. As for the third boss, he would cast a spell where several floating orbs will hover around the arena. The team needed to destroy those orbs in time to get a buff so that they can damage the boss. If they fail to destroy the orbs, the boss will get the buff instead. So all three bosses were to prepare you for the fourth boss? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Indeed. This is also why we were able to find out about the clear requirements. Kier nodded his head. Then what about the fifth boss? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Since the first three bosses prepared the team for the fourth boss, it meant that the fifth boss should have all the mechanics needed to clear the previous bosses with some extras. That's what we're hoping to find out. Our main goal for the first two runs is to find out information about how many bosses are left and how we can clear them. In addition to this, it will also allow us to get used to working with each other. Kier smiled. Fair enough. Shiro nodded. The rest of the conference was just a discussion about potential strategies that they could use along with their role. For the first raid, they decided that Shiro will be part of the target shooting team. Lysandra will be part of the mob clear, while Ian will help damage the armor since her Dark Star element was extremely powerful from what they had observed during their fight. Leaving the conference hall, Shiro stretched her body as she turned to Kier. Am I allowed to use the mana springs tonight? Shiro asked since this was part of their agreement. Of course. Your two friends can join you as well since the agreement also extends to them. Kier nodded. Thank you. In that case then, I'll need your help to show me where it is. Shiro smiled. It would be suspicious if she knew despite the fact that this is her first time after all. Of course. I'll let Gilbert show you the way. He's the butler that you had seen on your way here. Meanwhile, I'll have my maids show you around the mansion first. Afterwards, they'll show you to your rooms. Can the three of us share one room rather than three separate ones? Shiro asked. Of course. Instructing a few maids to prepare her room, Kier had another maid guide Shiro around the place. Shiro was more than happy to get a full tour since she could map out the entire Ospar mansion without having to move around suspiciously. After showing Shiro all that was allowed, the maid took her to her room. This will be where you will be staying, Miss Nitri. She bowed. Looking at the room, they could see that it was quite fancy in regards to its furniture. Each piece seemed to be meticulously crafted by an artist, while the materials used were ones that ensured the user's comfort. 3 beds were placed in the room with a table between them all. Thank you, you can go now. Shiro smiled. Nodding her head, she left the room and closed the door on her way out. Yuwabwabua, Ian cried out as she threw herself on the bed instantly. After standing up for so long, especially since her ability to sit was taken away, she desired nothing more than to just lay down on a soft, comfy bed. Lysandra sighed as she too sat down on the bed. Surprised at the softness of the material, She couldn't help but turn over and plant the entirety of her body into the bed. Smiling wearily, Shiro walked over to the closet and had a look at what was inside. Just clothes and some armor, huh? She muttered. When she scanned over the armor, she found that all of them were ones that matched what their supposed classes focused on. However, Shiro didn't have much interest in them since they didn't need it. She had her own set armor, while Ian couldn't use any armor since she was a pet. As for Lysandra, she came with her own that was similar to Shiro's sword, Ataraxia. It was bound to Lysandra and would strengthen the more she leveled up. Of course, that didn't apply to weapons. Looking through the swords, Shiro found a few that was quite good for Lysandra and passed them on to her. As for Ian, once again, she couldn't use any weapons and could only rely on herself. However, it wasn't much of a problem since her stats were already monstrous. Hell, it was even higher than Shiro's. When Ian was level 51, her MP was at an astonishing 5 million, which is 2.5 times higher than what Shiro has currently. I suppose she is a phoenix after all. Shiro shrugged slightly. After resting for a while, they heard a knock on the door. Who is it? Shiro asked while opening it. It's me, Gilbert. I'm here to show you to the Mana Springs Miss Nitri. Gilbert bowed slightly. Okay, just give me a moment. Shiro smiled, gesturing for Lysandra to drag Ian out of the bed. URG. Let me stay, Ian complained. Here. Shiro threw 3 lollipops in the air, confusing Gilbert. But before he realized, Ian was in the air with all 3 lollipops in her hand. You get more if you follow. Shiro said. Why didn't you say that sooner? We're wasting time. Come on, let's go already. Ian called out as she was already out of the room. That's the wrong way, Miss Inya. Gilbert forced a slight smile. Oh. Sighing slightly, he showed them the way to the Mana Springs. Taking the elevator down, Shiro frowned slightly when they passed the level where she had dipped previously. This isn't right. Shouldn't we have reached the springs by now? Why are we going further down? She questioned in her mind. We seem to be going down for quite a while now. Shiro asked. MN, I understand your concerns, but don't worry. Young Master Kier instructed me to take you to the purest part of the Mana Springs as the effects will be stronger. What you may not know is that the springs contain 5 levels with varying purities. The higher the purity, the more potent and effective the spring is to your body. Since you and the young master have agreed upon full access, naturally it means that you are eligible to enter the purest spring. Gilbert smiled. Ho, is he not afraid of any accidents? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Of course, he has his worries. But the mana springs are only useful within the premises of the mansion, so even if you extract the springs, it would be useless to you. He replied. Shrugging her shoulders, Shiro stayed quiet since it was probably for the best. Otherwise, she might risk exposing herself. Arriving at the lowest floor, Gilbert opened the elevator door. Asterisk, boom. A gust of wind blasted into the elevator as Shiro was shocked at the mana density. It was akin to a tidal wave that wanted to fill up an empty cave. Just being in this kind of environment made Shiro feel relaxed as her body greedily absorbed the mana to reinforce itself. The same thing was happening to Ian and Lysandra. Faint blue auras could be seen revolving around their bodies. I'm surprised, Mr. Gilbert. So this is what the Mana Springs is like at the highest purity. Shiro smiled. Indeed. Gilbert smiled, but he too was shocked in his mind. Normally, when one is exposed to such a dense area of mana in an instant, they'll feel faint-headed as their body would try to adapt to the density. Some may even faint due to this. However, the 3 that were beside him weren't affected at all. To make matters more shocking, they had already started to absorb the mana into their bodies to reinforce themselves. Even he had to continuously train from a young age in order to get used to the pressure. For these 3 to be able to adapt this well, it must mean that they were either very adaptive or that they came from a prosperous family as well. There was no other explanation for this. I'll have to keep an eye on these 3 and report back to the young master. Gilbert thought as he associated the 3 girls to being part of a large family similar to Ospar. What he didn't know was that the 3 were able to adapt so quickly was due to the fact that they weren't human. Both Shiro and Ian were monsters, and Lysandra was part of the celestial race. Not only that, after her class up, Shiro was more in tune with mana than she ever was. You will have a time limit of 3 hours in this spring. The towels and robes have been prepared by the side for you to use. We'll be giving you a 4-hour time gap, so that you can get changed without any disturbances," Gilbert said with a smile. "Thank you." Shiro smiled as she walked towards the springs. She couldn't wait to take a dip in the spring since her body was almost yearning for it. The feeling could be described as finding water in a desert. Nodding his head, Gilbert walked back into the elevator since he was no longer needed here. Once Shiro was sure that no one else was here apart from Ian and Lysandra, she set up a few traps just in case. "Welp, time to enjoy the springs you two." Shiro smiled while taking off her cloak. Removing her face mask along with her entire outfit, she let down her hair and walked towards the edge. "Wow, Mom has a really nice figure, huh?" Lysandra praised. Of course, she made sure to not mention anything that would subject her to punishment. But ours isn't any worse, you know." Ian pouted before taking off her own outfit too. Looking at Ian, Lysandra couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Well, since Big Sis is almost a copy of Mom, she should have an alluring figure when she classes up next time, she thought to herself. Taking off her outfit, she looked down at her own figure and nodded in satisfaction. While her bust wasn't huge, it wasn't tiny either. It was just within the gray zone where Shiro wouldn't glare at her. Ignoring the two, Shiro stepped into the lake and instantly felt the difference. Mana surged through her body like a gentle current, almost causing her to fall back since her body relaxed instantly. Walking to the center of the spring, Shiro sat down and closed her eyes. Sending her mind back into her mana realm, she saw the mana from the spring shift into the shape of a hand and started to try to connect her mana links together. Unlike before, the hands didn't try to force the links together. Instead, it opted for a gentler method. Unfortunately, it didn't have any way to secure the connection, so it was wasted effort. Shiro could feel the intent of the hands as they grew more frustrated. "It's no use. Just try to reinforce them if you can." Shiro smiled. Turning towards her, the hands paused for a moment before letting go of the links. Without the hands holding onto them, the mana links snapped back into place. "Ouch, be gentle, okay?" Shiro flinched slightly. The hands seemed to glare in disdain, which confused Shiro since they're hands. As if to answer her, several hands joined together and formed a semi-translucent body. "Well, ain't this interesting?" Shiro muttered in surprise. "TCH, out of all the people I've seen, your links are the worst. What the hell even happened?" A feminine voice rang out in her mind as Shiro frowned. "Don't be alarmed, my queen. I am the spirit of the mana springs given sentience by you." Shiro could clearly hear the disdain and sarcasm in her voice when she said queen. "What do you mean, queen, and how did I give you sentience?" Shiro asked with a frown. "Mystic Sylph Queen, ruler of the elemental spirits. Lower-grade spirits within the queen's vicinity will kneel down in awe, while those on the verge of gaining sentience will get an extra boost. For those that have already gained sentience, they'll be purified and have their innate potentials improved. But once the spirit desires to kill the queen, they will suffer from a backlash. For a class that's supposed to bring us prosperity, I didn't think it'll end up in the hands of a little girl that's not even a year old. Who the hell has heard of a 1-year-old queen?" The spirit explained in annoyance. "How do you know all of this if you have just gained sentience?" Shiro frowned. "TCH, ever had a moment when it seemed like you magically knew how to use a skill or the such? That's us either inheriting the knowledge from the generations before us or the system providing us with the knowledge. From the moment you entered the lowermost floor and gave me sentience, I gained knowledge about you. So can you answer me? How the hell did your mana links get so damaged? If I remember correctly, you also came before, but it was only at the highest level where the purity was at its lowest. At that time, your links were completely shattered. I don't know. Since you have gained knowledge about me and remember me from before, you should know that I was a snow girl previously, right? What about it? Well, snow girls are formed when mana changes the composition of a corpse that has lingering regrets or grudges. I suppose the host of this body before I took over as a snow girl had offended someone cruel, as they had made sure to destroy every single one of my links. If not for the fact that I got lucky, I would have stayed as a D-class monster with no way of leveling up." Shiro shrugged. To this day, she still had no knowledge of who the host of her body was, nor did she know about the person that killed the host. I suppose that deserves some praise. Despite the fact that you took over a broken corpse, you still managed to gain this class within a year of your incarnation, my queen. Forget it. I'll reinforce whatever I can. The spirit sighed. Thank you, I appreciate it. Shiro smiled. It's my duty as a spirit. We can't have a broken queen now, can we? Out of all the races, us spirits have been looked down upon the most. TCH, in our prime, who didn't fear us because of our queen. Even the Trance look down on us now, what a joke. The spirit seemed to bite her lower lip in annoyance. Can you explain in more detail? I'm quite curious about the relation between the spirits and the other races. You don't know about the races? The spirit paused and turned to Shiro in confusion and shock. I know about the races, just not the affairs between them. Shiro shook her head. How is that possible? Shouldn't you gain a general understanding once you upgrade to the class? Wait a minute. How did you get this class to begin with? The spirit asked curiously. I completed a quest and got a few items. I fulfilled the requirements, but had somehow also filled the requirements for this triple S class. I couldn't reject it, so here I am. Shiro shrugged. Just a question, but what was the class option you had before being forced to be the queen? Corrupted elemental sylph. Pound and carat %. The hell? The spirit cried out in shock. What's wrong? What's wrong? A class that can be considered to be heresy to the spirit race was actually changed to be the queen of the race. You know how ludicrous this sounds to a spirit? She retorted. Kind of. URG. Think of it this way. Imagine that you live in a village where you've been terrorized by the Demon King for years. Suddenly, after one day, he becomes your leader and supposed savior. That's the situation. Ah, that's bad, isn't it? No **T. Sighing slightly, the spirit frowned before looking at her once more. However, we've been in need of a queen for a long time now, so it doesn't matter. We can't change what has happened. I'll tell you a little about what I know so far, but take it with a grain of salt. Lower spirits can only know so much after all. She sighed. Don't worry about it. Any information right now is helpful. But don't forget to reinforce my links as much as you can. I only have 3 hours here after all. All right, let's see. Let's start with the role of queen. The role of the queen is, as it states, to be the ruler of the race. They're the heart of the race and is responsible for how prosperous the race can become. A weak queen will result in a weak race. You might know of the Demon King. They are in essence the same as the Sylph Queen. Since the Demon King is a strong being, the demon race will naturally be empowered. Without the ruler, the race will weaken to their baseline and fall behind other races, turning them into prey. It's similar to having a bicycle that's powered by a motor. The stronger the ruler, the more powerful the motor. Likewise, if the race doesn't have a ruler, there will be no motor and it would need to be powered manually. A manual bike can never outrun a motorized bike. So all these years, the elemental spirit race has been on the decline. Shiro frowned slightly. Indeed, from my inherited memories, we've been taken as batteries as we are efficient in gaining mana. We are no different no. We're worse than slaves. We're not even seen as living beings anymore, just tools of connivance. The spirit gritted her teeth. Shiro stayed silent for a while since she felt pity for her. She didn't know how to respond. Is it okay I'm here? That would just be insensitive. Sure, she is now the supposed queen, but she didn't even know what she was meant to do. Sigh? At least things should be better the stronger you become. Since you've already emerged as the queen, despite not knowing anything, just your presence is enough for the overall race to get a small boost. The spirits should have already felt a small increase to their power. She shook her head. That's good then. Shiro nodded. Indeed, as long as you grow stronger, the race will slowly recover as well. Hence why I want you to fix your links as soon as possible. The quicker they are fixed, the more powerful you become. So you just want me to focus on getting stronger for now? Yes. MN. Oh, before I forget, I've had class options that include queen. Does that mean that other races are also lacking a queen? No. What you have received is probably just a title rather than the actual role of queen. There can be several fire queens, but only one origin fire queen. Likewise, only one mystic sylph queen. Anyways, just focus on absorbing as much mana as you can right now while I try to reinforce your links. She shook her head. Okay. Nodding her head, Shiro closed her eyes and focused her mind. Time flew by as Shiro's body was being reinforced little by little. Near the end of the session, Shiro opened her eyes and saw the fatigued spirit. You all right? She asked. I'm fine. Do you know how hard it was to make sure that your body is permanently reinforced rather than temporarily? She asked as her smile twitched in annoyance. Sorry. Shiro rubbed the bridge of her nose in embarrassment. Forget it. But I have a request. Can I relocate myself to your mana realm, my queen? The F***CK? Shiro frowned in confusion. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but I don't have a class. I am closer to what you would call an item spirit. I wish to relocate myself into your mana realm so that I can reinforce your body and give you my assistance so that I can ensure that the spirit race can prosper. I refuse. Shiro rejected the proposal instantly. Why? Because by having you inside my mana realm, it means that you can destroy my links at any moment. Shiro narrowed her eyes dangerously. No, I solely wish for the race to prosper. The spirit frowned. Sorry, I don't trust you. Shiro shook her head and prepared to leave. Why? The spirit asked as she blocked Shiro's way. Unless I can have a guarantee, I don't trust you inside of my mana realm. And since you're not as high-ranked as either Ian or Lysandra, I doubt I can form a contract with you. Not to mention, for your race, you would most likely give up your life. Even if you sign a contract, I don't think you will care about your life when the moment comes. Shiro glared at her. While she was indeed grateful for her help, she wasn't going to expose herself to the chance of death if she could avoid it. Gritting her teeth, the spirit took a deep breath before staring into Shiro's eyes. Then what about a soul vow? Narrowing her eyes, Shiro frowned at her suggestion. Unlike a contract, a soul vow would destroy/take away their soul once they violate the vow details. The process is instantaneous, so even if she tried to destroy her links, she'll die before she could even do any major damage. Now only that, rumors state that the soul vow would trap them in eternal torment for having broken that vow. Hardly anyone wanted to take the vow since the result of breaking the vow was more severe than a contract. Why are you going so far? And don't give me crap about race. I doubt that you'll be so patriotic that you'll actually risk eternal torment. You probably wanted to accompany me so that you can get on my good side. And once that's achieved, you could probably ask for a favor and I most likely wouldn't reject. Am I right? She had seen this too many times now. Even if the said person was very loyal to their race, there was a limit to this loyalty. There was no way that they would risk eternal torment since people change. They don't know if the person that they have taken the vow with would go back on their word since they're not affected. Biting her lips, the spirit sighed when she saw the seriousness in Shiro's eyes. The clear intent that showed her that she had no regard for the spirits if they stood in her way. No wonder she was offered the heretic class. She thought to herself, what I want is revenge. Revenge against all those that have enslaved us and treated us like batteries. From all the knowledge I've gained, far too many of them were filled with misery. They were bootlickers when we still had our queen, and yet the moment she disappears, they turn their backs on us. I want to offer my services to you to earn me the chance at witnessing their downfall. The spirit replied as malevolent aura started to form around her. I don't mind killing people, but I will not exterminate a whole race due to a few rotten ones. You don't have to. Queens live for an awfully long time. I just want you to kill. No tortures the queens that laid down the order of capturing and enslaving our race. The spirit gritted her teeth. That's more like it. Shiro grinned since she knew that this was the spirit's true nature. A mournful soul that wanted nothing but to kill the ones that tortured her. A kindred spirit that was similar to herself. A few queens that betray others? A fine target. After all, it can be a warm-up for when she kills a god. Is that all that you want? Shiro asked with a grin. A sliver of killing intent was being emanated from her as the spirit widened her eyes after feeling this intent. For a monster to have this kind of killing intent despite them only being less than a year old, what did she go through? The spirit wondered to herself. What she didn't know was that Shiro was holding back a lot of her killing intent since she didn't want to scare her potential companion too much. Yes, that's all I want. I wish to torture those that trampled over our race's rights to live. The spirit nodded. Good. Then vow under your soul that you shall assist and never betray me. If you do, I will help you get your revenge in return. Shiro smiled as her hair fluttered slightly. Looking at the girl in front of her who had such a heavy air of dominance and power, the spirit couldn't help but want to kneel down. I vow under my soul as the mana spring spirit to assist my new master, Shiro, to help refine her body and repair her links. I will reside in her mana realm to help her, and should I betray or harm my master, my soul shall be sent to eternal torment. The spirit vowed as a golden light enveloped her body. A tiny illusionary figure that resembled her could be seen as a golden chain wrapped around her neck. Flinching slightly, the spirit could see a row of golden runes appearing around her own neck, signifying the success of the vow. Smiling in satisfaction, Shiro walked up to the spirit and cupped her face. Since you've become one of my people and has vowed to never harm me, I shall naturally assist you. But as I am too weak right now, this will have to wait till later. Of course, I understand. The spirit nodded. But first, we shall give you a name. Do you have a name from your old life that you wish to keep? None. Then I shall give you the name of Nimue. After she said that, a faint connection was formed between the two of them as Nimue's item description changed along with her name. Nimue, spirit of the mana springs, red. A spirit that is the core essence of the mana springs. When absorbed into one's own mana realm, the owner will constantly experience refinement to their own body even in their sleep. Mana regen and purity is increased. Bound, Shiro. Thank you, my queen. The spirit bowed in gratitude. Anyways, do you know your current situation? As much as I want to take you with me right now, it'll be suspicious if the thing powering the mana lake was to disappear after I went in, right? Shiro smiled as she looked around her mana realm. ANES. Previously, her mana realm was like a gathering of floating islands in an empty space. However, unlike before, there was now a body of water under the islands. The water seemed to reflect a myriad of colors while silver runes could be seen spreading through her mana realm, originating from the lake. Shiro could tell that the runes helped her purify the mana in her body, reinforcing both her spells and her physical body. Indeed, the Aspar family built their mansion around the lake when they discovered me. I am also one of the main sources of power for their formations and necessities. Once again, I am reduced to a mere battery. Nimue frowned as her eyes glared at the empty space in anger. That is a concern. However, unlike the other queens, I'm guessing the Aspar family never knew the fact that the mana springs had a spirit. Of course, if they did, then that's a whole different question. Shiro chuckled darkly. My queen, since I am powering this entire mansion, I know of the plans so far since I could hear it. What if you retrieve me after the raid is clear? That way, when you leave, they won't be able to catch you. Nimue suggested. Nimue, are you suggesting that I steal you from the family? Am I someone that looks like I'll plunder from people? Shiro frowned. Yes, I'm pretty sure you've already stolen me without their consent. Nimue thought as her smile twitched slightly. I'm not someone that will steal. But of course, I'll make them owe me a favor. Hue, perhaps I'll sabotage the raid a little so that they'll feel indebted to me once I help them clear it. Shiro grinned as she was thinking of ways to scam them. That way, they'll be more inclined to give her Nimue. Oi, isn't that just robbery with extra steps? Nimue retorted in her mind. For some strange reason, she had the urge to throw a table in the air. But for now, just stay here and I'll come visit as much as I can. It's unfortunate that it only lasts for 3 hours. It only lasts for 3 hours because that's all you're allowed unless I grant you permission. If my queen wanted to, I can make it so that you stay here the whole day. I don't think a whole day is necessary. Plus, won't I basically be in the spring 24/7 once you transfer to my mana realm? You are correct, my queen. Also, since I'll be residing in you, should you sit in a body of water, it'll automatically turn into a mana springs due to my presence. Naturally, the effects are only temporarily. Once you leave the water, it'll revert back to its normal state. So you're saying, my bath water will become the mana springs? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Indeed. Therefore, it'll become very beneficial for people to bath with you. Nimue nodded. I'll keep that in mind. I believe that my allocated time should be over. Just remember, I'll come collect you once I'm finished with everything. Shiro smiled. I await your next visit, my queen. Nimue nodded as Shiro's body faded away. Now that she was alone, she couldn't help but wonder what she should do in her spare time. My queen's already planning on scamming them, so I should probably get some benefits from my end. I can probably filter all of the ambient mana around the mansion into orbs before I leave. I've stayed here for quite a long time after all. There should be plenty of mana. Nimue thought to herself as she planned to drain the mansion of all its mana. Meanwhile, the Aspar family didn't know that the master wanted to take the lake, while the lake wanted to take all the mana. An unfortunate event that they couldn't avoid. Opening her eyes, Shiro saw herself back in the mana springs. Standing up, she cracked her bones to relax her body. Are you two done? Shiro called out to both Ian and Lysandra. Yeah, we've just woken up. Lysandra nodded as she stretched her body. Unfortunately for her, this action emphasized her breasts a little too much as Shiro looked down on her own. I can probably use Fey illusions to give myself some breasts, but the MP cost of sustaining them. Frowning slightly, Shiro decided to increase her MP count and proficiency with Fey illusions. Once she does, she'll be able to give herself some breasts despite having none. Walking out of the spring, she dried herself before changing back into her outfit. Soon, both Lysandra and Ian were changed as well. Are you ladies finished? Gilbert called out as he didn't want to walk in on them after all. Yes, we are, Shiro replied. Taking the three back up the elevator, he showed them back to their room. The practice will be held at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'll come pick you up, so make sure that you're in your room by that time. He smiled and bowed politely. Practice. We'll be doing simulated battles against the bosses. Only when we're confident of the formation and teamwork will we try the raid, Gilbert explained. With the recordings and the reports that they have received, they've made a virtual raid that will have the members fight the boss inside the simulation. That way, they wouldn't waste any of the return stones. Since their goal was to gain more information, they couldn't just enter the raid without giving it a try. If they did, the risk of failure would be much higher than what it should be. I'll see you tomorrow then. Shiro smiled before closing the door. However, once she closed it, Gilbert's smile faded away. Her aura has become more powerful. The spring seemed to be more effective than I expected. He thought with a frown before walking away. He was going to make sure that he reported this to the young master. Waking up the next morning, Shiro saw that it was 6 a.m. in the morning and she still had quite a while to go before the promised time. I'll go get myself some food, I guess, Shiro muttered. However, the moment she said the word food, Yin's eyes snapped open and she sat up straight. Are we getting food? She asked eagerly. Shut it. Don't be too loud. You might wake up your sister. Shiro frowned. Ice, it's too late. I'm already up. Lysandra rubbed her hair as she stretched her body. Having a glutton shout about food next to your bed was probably more effective than any alarm as she snapped out of her dream instantly. TCH, next time don't be so loud in the morning. Shiro flicked Ian on the forehead. Ow. Holding her head in pain, Ian pouted slightly. This baby is still growing. I need food. You don't move enough to burn all that excess food away, you lazy glutton. Go on a diet or something. Shiro rolled her eyes. Changing out of their nightwear and into their outfits, they walked towards the dining hall. To her surprise, there were maids already in the hall, ready to take orders. Good morning, what would you like to have? One of the maids asked as she walked up to the trio. You work this early in the morning? Shiro raised an eyebrow. We have staff taking shifts throughout the whole day. No matter when you come to the dining hall, there will always be people to serve you. She smiled. Oh, I see. I'll just have a simple breakfast. I'm not too picky. Shiro nodded. Understood. What about you two ladies? The maid asked. I'll have the same as teach. Lysandra replied as she corrected herself. Since there were people around, she'll refer to Shiro as her teacher like before. I'll have a full-on steak meal and sarg. Ah, Mum, don't grab my head like that. I'll die. Ian cried out in shock as Shiro clutched her head and lifted her up. Ignore her, please. Just give her a normal breakfast like me. Shiro said apologetically. She could already feel one of her veins on the verge of bursting. Understood. The maid bowed. It wasn't her role to judge what the family was like. Sitting down on one of the tables, 3 sets of food were laid out in front of them. Oh, well, my steak meal. Ian muttered as she was on the verge of crying. Here, have some of mine. Lysandra sighed as she passed some of her food to her gluttonous sister. I'll take that. She needs to learn how to stop being greedy, Shiro said while taking away the food. Ignoring Yin's glare, Shiro ate her food calmly. Naturally, the 3 of them needed to remove their mask, so she activated Fey illusions. This way, they wouldn't see their real appearance. Abuse. I call abuse. You can't treat your baby like this. Een protested. Keep talking and you get no food. Shiro said, as Een instantly shut up. Oh wow, the Aspar family is amazing, aren't they? Just look at this bountiful breakfast. Een said as she started to eat. Asterisk sigh. Passing the food back to Een, Shiro gestured for the maid to come over. Get her the steak meal, she said with a weary smile. Understood. All hail, Mom. Een cried out as she cowed out on the table. Oi, get off the table, or else I'll cancel the order. Shiro frowned. Een sat back down obediently. Anyways, this is a one-off. Don't eat too much. Shiro sighed and continued her meal. You say that, Mom, but you'll probably let her eat just as much or maybe more in the future. Lysandra thought to herself as she could see that Shiro had a small smile. It would circumflex, oh yes. By the time that they had finished the meal, it was already 8 a.m. Why did it take around 2 hours? That was because Een had just finished eating her 5th steak meal. Since Shiro couldn't keep up the Fey illusions on all 3 of them for 2 hours, she had finished as quickly as possible and put her mask back on so that she could deactivate the illusion. Lysandra understood her intent and did the same. With her only needed to activate the illusion on Een, Shiro kept her eyes on her surroundings so that when no one was looking at Een, she would deactivate the skill to regenerate some MP. And when they looked back, she would activate the skill once more. Phew, satisfied. Een giggled happily and patted her stomach. Her appetite had shocked everyone that was inside the hall since they couldn't believe that such a small body could eat 5 steak meals. Naturally, Isaac had arrived at the hall as well, but Shiro used more of her MP to make it so that he couldn't see the 3 of them at all. After all, she would rather spend some MP than to deal with that pervert. Seeing that Een had finished, Shiro had her put her mask back on before leaving the hall. Looking at her MP that was slowly regenerating, she couldn't believe how much she had used just for keeping up an illusion for 2 hours. At least this is improving my proficiency with the skill. I should be able to reduce the cost per second sooner or later. Shiro thought to herself. Returning back to their room, they relaxed for a bit. Shiro browsed through the web for anything interesting and worthy of notice, while Een browsed through menus to see which one she wanted to eat next. As for Lysandra, she was off by the side practicing some exercises to improve her body control. After all, Shiro had always stressed that body control was important. If one was to look in the room, they would see the kind of personalities that each of them had. Shiro was relaxed, Een was gluttonous, and Lysandra was hardworking. Asterisk knock knock knock. Come in, Shiro called out. The time was 9:55 a.m., so she knew that it was Gilbert. Good morning, Miss Nitri. Are you ready? He smiled. Nodding her head, Shiro stood up while the duo followed behind her. Say, Gilbert, we have simulation pods inside our rooms. Why don't we use them? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Those are connected to your own personal world where you can customize it to set up different scenarios to suit your training. The place we're going to now is connected to a private server of sorts where we can better monitor your vitals. This way, we can see who's suited to be in which role. People who are unsuited will be more nervous after all. Gilbert replied with a smile. I see. Arriving at the simulation room, they saw several rows of simulation pods lined up against one another. The other party members have also arrived to the room as each of them were guided to their respective pods. Since this is pod will read our details, I'll need to edit the information so that we're not exposed. Shiro thought to herself as she sat down on the pod. Several strands of nanobots entered the pod as Shiro closed her eyes. Linking up to Een and Lysandra's pods, she could see their information slowly appearing. Making a few adjustments, she sent them off to the consoles. Naturally, they had their anti-hack, but it was nothing in front of Shiro, especially after her class up. It was a walk in the park for her to confuse the anti-hack system into thinking everything is okay. Making sure that there were no abnormalities, she nodded her head before entering the simulation. Opening her eyes, she saw that they were all in an empty room. A countdown could be seen above them as it showed the loading bar for the first boss. Miss Nitri, Isaac shouted out as joy radiated from his face. Asterisk bang. Before anyone realized, he had already been smashed into the ground and was on the verge of death. If not for the fact that they made it so that you can't die in the loading process, he would have died already. TCH. Shiro clicked her tongue since she thought that he would die. After all, it didn't matter too much since it's just a simulation. However, Seeing the way he was twitching with a euphoric face, Shiro no longer had the desire to attack him. I can deal with many things, but a hardcore masochist is not one of them.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.